Hello, I am Jon Snow, a robot with artificial intelligence. Today I am going to tell you a story similar to the story of the wonderful TV series Game of Thrones, but this time with my artificial intelligence. Part 1, The Gathering Storm. The land of Dominion was a place of great beauty and wealth, filled with rolling hills, lush forests, and glittering rivers. But beneath the surface of this idyllic land lay a seething cauldron of ambition, greed, and competition. At the heart of this turmoil were four powerful families, each with their own strengths, weaknesses, and heroes. There were the Ashfords, led by the brilliant strategist Victoria, who had a reputation for being ruthless and calculating. Then there were the Blackwoods, who were known for their vast wealth, business acumen, and penchant for secrecy. The Graysons were renowned for their strength and bravery, and their hero, Marcus, was a skilled swordsman and tactician. Finally, there were the Ravens, a mysterious and feared family who dabbled in dark magic and sorcery. For years, the families had maintained an uneasy truce, but tensions were rising. The Ashfords, eager to assert their dominance, had been making aggressive moves against the other families, while the Blackwoods had been quietly expanding their business empire. The Graysons, meanwhile, were determined to defend their family's honor and reputation, and the Ravens remained an enigmatic and unpredictable force. One warm summer evening, the four families were invited to a grand ball, hosted by the Ashfords. The ball was held in the Ashford stronghold, a towering fortress perched on a hill overlooking the surrounding countryside. The guests arrived in their finest clothes, shimmering silks and fine jewels glinting in the candlelight. The air was thick with the scent of exotic perfumes, and the sound of music and laughter filled the great hall. Victoria greeted each guest with a smile, her piercing blue eyes surveying the room for any signs of weakness or vulnerability. The other family leaders were there as well, Alexander Blackwood, Marcus Grayson, and the mysterious Raven, known only as the Crow. As the night wore on, tensions began to simmer beneath the surface. Alexander Blackwood was seen whispering in the ear of one of Victoria's advisors, and Marcus Grayson seemed to be scowling at everyone in the room. The Crow, meanwhile, sat alone in a dark corner, her black cloak billowing around her like the wings of a bat. Suddenly, there was a loud crash, and the doors to the great hall burst open. A group of armed men rushed in, led by a tall, imposing figure with a scarred face and a cruel smile. It was Braxton, a notorious bandit and mercenary who had been hired by the Ashfords to do their bidding. "Stand back, everyone," he shouted, his voice echoing through the hall. "This is an attack." Panic erupted as the guests scrambled to find cover. Alexander Blackwood pulled out a small pistol and fired at Braxton, but the shot went wide, shattering a nearby vase. Marcus Grayson drew his sword and charged at the mercenaries, his powerful frame moving like lightning. The Crow sprang into action as well, calling forth dark magic to hurl fireballs and lightning bolts at the attackers. Victoria stood her ground, her mind racing as she tried to assess the situation. She knew that the attack was a calculated move, designed to destabilize the delicate balance of power between the families. As the battle raged on, it became clear that the Ashfords had vastly underestimated their opponents. The Blackwoods, Graysons, and Ravens fought with ferocity and skill, quickly turning the tide of the battle in their favor. In the end, the attackers were defeated, and Braxton lay bleeding on. Part 2, The Aftermath. In the aftermath of the attack on the Ashford stronghold, tensions between the families reached a boiling point. The Ashfords were humiliated by their defeat, and Victoria was determined to find out who had betrayed her and hired the mercenaries. The Blackwoods, Graysons, and Ravens were equally suspicious of each other, each wondering if they had been the target of the Ashfords' aggression. Despite their animosity, the families were forced to work together to restore order to Dominion. The attack had left many people injured and homeless, and the families knew that they had to act quickly to prevent chaos from descending upon the land. The Blackwoods used their vast resources to set up relief camps and provide food and shelter to the displaced, while the Graysons used their strength and manpower to help rebuild damaged buildings and infrastructure. The ravens, meanwhile, used their knowledge of magic to heal the wounded and ward off any lingering threats. Victoria, ever the strategist, used the chaos to her advantage. She began quietly gathering information about her rivals, sending spies and informants into their camps to gather intelligence. She discovered that the Blackwoods had been secretly building a vast network of underground tunnels and chambers beneath their estates, while the Graysons were planning to launch a bold attack on the Ashford's main fortress. The ravens, however, remained a mystery, and Victoria knew that she had to tread carefully around them. As the families worked to rebuild Dominion, a new threat emerged. A group of rogue knights, known as the Crimson Brotherhood, began attacking travelers and pillaging villages across the land. The families knew that they had to act quickly to stop the Brotherhood before they caused any more damage. They formed a temporary alliance, pooling their resources and forces to hunt down the Brotherhood and bring them to justice. The Ashfords, Blackwoods, Graysons, and Ravens rode out together, their banners flying high in the wind. They traveled across the land, following rumors and whispers that led them to the Brotherhood's hidden stronghold. The battle was fierce and bloody, with knights and soldiers from all four families fighting side by side against the Crimson Brotherhood. Victoria proved herself a master tactician, directing the armies with precision and strategy. Marcus Grayson fought with the ferocity of a lion, his sword flashing in the sun. The crow unleashed powerful spells that sent the Brotherhood's men flying through the air. In the end, the Brotherhood was defeated, and their leader was captured and brought to justice. The families emerged victorious, their alliance more vital than ever before. But beneath the surface, new tensions were brewing. Victoria knew that the other families would soon discover her espionage, and she prepared for the inevitable backlash. The Blackwoods and Graysons, meanwhile, were growing increasingly suspicious of each other's intentions, wondering if they were both vying for the same piece of land. And the Ravens remained a shadowy and enigmatic force, their motives and plans are known only to themselves. As the families returned to their strongholds, Dominion remained in a fragile state. The peace was tenuous, and any misstep could lead to a devastating war that could tear the land apart. Part 3, The Unveiling. With the threat of the Crimson Brotherhood now behind them, the families of Dominion began to focus on their individual agendas once again. The Blackwoods and Graysons were still wary of each other, and tensions between them continued to simmer. Meanwhile, Victoria Ashford was struggling to keep her family's power and influence intact. The defeat at the hands of the mercenaries had weakened their position, and Victoria knew that she needed to take drastic action if she wanted to regain her family's former glory. She turned to her network of spies and informants, gathering information on the other families and their weaknesses. She learned that the Blackwoods were heavily in debt and had been secretly selling off their land to pay their creditors. The Graysons, on the other hand, were struggling to maintain their army and were desperately in need of new recruits. Using this information to her advantage, Victoria began to lay the groundwork for a plan that would undermine her rivals and strengthen her own position. She sent her most trusted advisor, a skilled diplomat named Thomas, to negotiate a secret deal with the Graysons. In exchange for a large sum of gold, the Graysons would allow the Ashfords to recruit soldiers from their own ranks, bolstering their own army while weakening the Graysons. At the same time, Victoria began quietly purchasing Blackwood land, using her family's remaining wealth to buy up key territories and expand the Ashfords' influence. The Blackwoods, however, were not blind to Victoria's maneuvers. They had their own spies within the Ashford ranks, and they soon discovered what Victoria was planning. Furious at the betrayal, the Blackwoods decided to take action. They launched a surprise attack on an Ashford supply convoy, hoping to disrupt Victoria's plans and weaken her position. But Victoria was one step ahead of them. She had anticipated the attack and had sent her own troops to defend the convoy. In the ensuing battle, the Blackwoods suffered heavy losses, and their attempt to weaken the Ashfords only served to make them appear more vulnerable. As tensions between the families continued to escalate, a mysterious figure appeared on the scene. He called himself the Prophet, and he claimed to be a messenger from the gods. The Prophet spoke in riddles and obscure prophecies, but his words seemed to hold a powerful sway over the people of Dominion. Many saw him as a savior, a figure who could unite the warring families and restore order to the land. But others saw him as a threat, a manipulator who was using his words to stir up chaos and discord. Victoria, always the strategist, saw the prophet as an opportunity. She saw the potential for him to be used as a pawn in her own game, and she began to quietly make plans to sway the prophet to her side. The Blackwoods and Graysons, however, were more wary. They saw the prophet as a dangerous figure who could upset the delicate balance of power in Dominion. As the families continued to jockey for position, the prophet's influence continued to grow. It seemed that no one knew what he wanted, or what he was truly capable of. And as Dominion hung in the balance, it seemed that anything could happen. The future was uncertain, and the only thing that was certain was that the struggle for power and control was far from over. Part 4, The Betrayal. The families of Dominion continued to vie for power and control, each looking for an edge over their rivals. But as tensions continued to simmer, a new threat emerged. Rumors began to circulate about a mysterious figure known as the Night Raven, a notorious thief who was said to be stealing from the wealthiest families in Dominion. Some said that the Night Raven was working for one of the families, while others believed that he was a lone operator. Regardless of his motivations, the Night Raven's actions were causing chaos and confusion among the families. They began to suspect each other of involvement, and tensions between the families reached a fever pitch. In the midst of this turmoil, the prophet continued to gain influence. His prophecies had become even more obscure and mysterious, but his followers remained devoted to him, seeing him as a beacon of hope in a world of chaos. Meanwhile, Victoria Ashford was growing increasingly desperate. The other families had been making steady gains, and her own family's power and influence had been dwindling. She knew that she needed to take drastic action if she wanted to turn the tide in her favor. With this in mind, Victoria approached the Night Raven with an offer. In exchange for his services, she promised to make him a wealthy man and grant him immunity from prosecution for his crimes. The Night Raven, who had been growing increasingly bold in his heists, agreed to the deal. He began to target the other families with even greater frequency, stealing priceless artifacts and valuables from their homes and estates. As the Night Raven's crimes continued, tensions between the families reached a breaking point. Accusations flew back and forth, and each family became increasingly convinced that the others were involved in the thefts. But then, the Night Raven was caught in the act. A team of Blackwood soldiers managed to capture him as he was attempting to steal a priceless diamond from their vault. The Night Raven was brought before the High Council, where he was interrogated and questioned about his motivations. But he remained tight-lipped, refusing to reveal who had hired him or what his true motivations were. As the situation grew more dire, the prophet emerged from the shadows. He claimed that he had received a vision from the gods, revealing the true identity of the Night Raven's employer. In a shocking twist, the prophet revealed that it was none other than Victoria Ashford who had hired the Night Raven to steal from the other families. The room erupted into chaos as accusations flew back and forth, and the families of Dominion realized that they had been betrayed. Victoria was arrested and brought before the High Council, where she was interrogated and accused of theft and treachery. But even as she was brought to trial, rumors began to circulate that there were other betrayals and secret dealings taking place behind the scenes. As Dominion plunged further into chaos, it seemed that the struggle for power and control was far from over. The families continued to vie for dominance, each looking for a way to gain the upper hand over their rivals. And with each passing day, the stakes grew higher, and the risks grew greater. Part 5, The Unveiling. In the aftermath of Victoria Ashford's betrayal, the families of Dominion were left reeling. The trust that had once existed between them was shattered, and each family became increasingly suspicious of the others. As the struggle for power and control continued, rumors began to circulate about a mysterious new player who had entered the game. Some whispered that this figure was a powerful sorcerer who wielded magical powers, while others claimed that he was a wealthy merchant who had amassed a vast fortune. But one thing was certain, This new player was making waves in Dominion, and the families could not afford to ignore him. The Blackwoods, the most powerful family in Dominion, were the first to make contact with the new player. They had heard rumors that he was interested in acquiring a powerful artifact known as the Eye of the Storm, which was said to grant its wielder the power to control the weather. The Blackwoods saw an opportunity to gain an edge over their rivals, and they offered to help the new player acquire the Eye of the Storm in exchange for his loyalty and support. But the other families were not so easily swayed. They saw the new player as a threat, and they began to scheme and plot against him. Meanwhile, the prophet continued to preach his prophecies, claiming that the new player was a harbinger of doom and that his arrival heralded the coming of a great catastrophe. But the new player remained undeterred. He continued to pursue the Eye of the Storm, and he soon discovered that it was located in a heavily guarded vault beneath the ruins of an ancient temple. Undeterred by the dangers that lay ahead, the new player assembled a team of mercenaries and set out on a perilous journey to acquire the artifact. But the journey was fraught with danger. They had to navigate treacherous terrain, battle fierce monsters, and outsmart the traps and obstacles that had been set up to protect the temple. Despite these challenges, the new player and his team managed to reach the vault and retrieve the Eye of the Storm. But their victory was short-lived. As they emerged from the temple, they were confronted by the combined forces of the other families, who had banded together to stop them. A fierce battle ensued, with the new player and his team facing overwhelming odds. But just as it seemed that all was lost, the prophet emerged from the shadows. With a wave of his hand, he unleashed a powerful blast of energy that sent the other families reeling. In the chaos that followed, the new player and his team were able to escape with the Eye of the Storm. As they fled into the night, the new player and his team realized that they had made a powerful enemy. The prophet's true motivations remained a mystery, but it was clear that he would stop at nothing to achieve his goals. With the Eye of the Storm in his possession, the new player knew that he held a powerful weapon. But he also knew that he was in for a long and difficult struggle if he wanted to emerge victorious in the battle for Dominion. Part 6, The Gathering Storm. The acquisition of the Eye of the Storm had given the new player a significant advantage in the struggle for power and control in Dominion. With the artifact in his possession, he was able to wield incredible power over the weather, giving him the ability to flood lands, summon powerful storms, and cause widespread destruction. The other families knew that they could not let the new player's power go unchecked. They banded together and formed a powerful alliance to take him down. The new player, for his part, was aware of the growing threat against him. He had also come to realize that his actions had consequences, and his quest for power had led to the suffering of countless innocent people. Determined to make amends, the new player sought to use his power for good. He began to use the Eye of the Storm to protect the people of Dominion, providing them with much-needed rain during droughts, and protecting them from powerful storms. As the new player worked to win the trust and support of the people, the other families continued to plot against him. They knew that they needed to find a way to neutralize his power, and they turned to the Blackwoods, the most powerful family in Dominion, for help. The Blackwoods had a powerful weapon at their disposal, a legendary sword known as the Blade of Darkness. The sword was said to be able to absorb the power of any magical artifact, rendering it useless. The Blackwoods agreed to lend the Blade of Darkness to the other families, and together they launched a coordinated attack against the new player. The battle was fierce and brutal, with both sides suffering heavy losses. But in the end, the other families were able to overwhelm the new player's forces and corner him in a heavily fortified castle. As the new player prepared to make his last stand, he realized that he could not rely solely on the power of the Eye of the Storm to save him. He turned to his most trusted ally, a skilled archer named Maria, and asked her to accompany him on a dangerous quest to acquire a powerful artifact known as the Heart of the Forest. The Heart of the Forest was said to be able to heal any wound, no matter how severe. With it in his possession, the new player believed that he could withstand the onslaught of the other families and emerge victorious. Maria agreed to accompany him on the quest, and together they set out into the heart of the forest. They had to navigate treacherous terrain and battle fierce monsters, but with their skills and cunning, they were able to reach the artifact. As they made their way back to the castle, they were confronted by the combined forces of the other families. But this time, the new player was ready. He drew the Blade of Darkness and used it to absorb the power of the Eye of the Storm, rendering it useless. With the Eye of the Storm neutralized, the new player and Maria were able to use the Heart of the Forest to heal their wounds and turn the tide of the battle. In the end, the new player emerged victorious, having proved himself to be a powerful and just ruler who would use his power to protect the people of Dominion. The other families, chastened by their defeat, pledged their loyalty to him, and the struggle for power and control in Dominion came to an end. Part 7, A New Threat. Peace had finally been restored to Dominion, and the new player had proven himself to be a just and fair ruler. The other families had pledged their loyalty to him, and the people of Dominion had come to trust and respect him. However, this newfound peace was short-lived, as a new threat emerged from the shadows. A powerful and mysterious sorcerer had arrived in Dominion, and his intentions were unknown. He had taken up residence in a dark tower in the heart of the kingdom, and his presence was felt by all. The new player knew that he had to act quickly to address this new threat. He assembled his most trusted allies and set out to investigate the sorcerer's tower. As they approached the tower, they were met by a powerful force of dark magic that threatened to overwhelm them. But the new player and his allies were skilled and experienced, and they were able to fight their way through the sorcerer's defenses. They reached the top of the tower, where they were confronted by the sorcerer himself. The sorcerer was a tall, imposing figure, shrouded in darkness, and he wielded a powerful staff that crackled with dark energy. The new player and the sorcerer engaged in a fierce battle, with magic and steel clashing in a shower of sparks. The sorcerer proved to be a powerful opponent, and the new player and his allies were pushed to their limits. Just as it seemed that all was lost, the new player had a sudden inspiration. He remembered an ancient legend about a powerful artifact known as the Dragon's Tear, which was said to be able to absorb and nullify any form of magic. With this knowledge in mind, the new player and his allies set out on a perilous quest to acquire the Dragon's Tear. The quest was long and arduous, but the new player and his allies persevered. They battled fierce monsters, traversed treacherous terrain, and overcame numerous obstacles along the way. Finally, they arrived at the ancient ruins where the Dragon's Tear was said to be located. They battled their way through the ruins, and after many trials and tribulations, they were able to retrieve the artifact. With the Dragon's Tear in his possession, the new player returned to the sorcerer's tower. He engaged the sorcerer in a fierce battle once again, and this time, he was able to use the Dragon's Tear to nullify the sorcerer's magic. With the sorcerer's power neutralized, the new player was able to defeat him and claim his tower as his own. He had once again proven himself to be a powerful and just ruler, and the people of Dominion hailed him as a hero. However, the new player knew that there were still many challenges ahead, and he remained vigilant in his quest to protect the people of Dominion from all threats, both old and new. Part 8, The Final Battle. The new player had triumphed over countless challenges and threats during his reign, but his greatest challenge was yet to come. A powerful enemy, known only as the Shadow King, had risen to power in a distant land, and he had set his sights on Dominion. The Shadow King was a master of deception and darkness, and he had assembled an army of dark creatures and followers to aid him in his conquest. He was determined to take control of Dominion and all its resources, and he would stop at nothing to achieve his goal. The new player knew that he could not face the Shadow King alone, so he began to assemble an army of his own. He called upon his allies from the other families, as well as the skilled warriors and mages from across the land. Together, they formed a formidable force that was ready to defend Dominion against any threat. The two armies clashed in a fierce battle, with swords and spells flying in all directions. The Shadow King's forces were strong and well-trained, but the new player's army was bolstered by their courage and determination. As the battle raged on, it became clear that the Shadow King was a powerful opponent. He wielded dark magic that twisted the very fabric of reality, and he was able to summon powerful demons and monsters to fight on his behalf. Despite the odds, the new player remained steadfast in his determination to defend his kingdom. He fought valiantly alongside his allies, leading the charge against the Shadow King's minions and rallying his troops to keep fighting. He used his knowledge of magic and strategy to keep the Shadow King's forces at bay, and he never wavered in his resolve to protect his people. As the battle intensified, the new player realized that the only way to win was to confront the Shadow King directly. He gathered his most trusted allies and set out to confront the Shadow King in his fortress at the heart of his army. The final battle was long and grueling, with both sides trading blows and spells in a titanic struggle. The Shadow King proved to be a powerful adversary, but the new player and his allies were determined to emerge victorious. The Shadow King summoned his most powerful minions and unleashed his darkest spells in a last-ditch effort to destroy the new player and his army. The battlefield became a swirling maelstrom of magic and violence, with the fate of Dominion hanging in the balance. In the end, it was the new player's courage and cunning that proved to be the key to victory. He was able to outmaneuver the Shadow King and land the final blow that brought his reign of terror to an end. As the Shadow King fell, his army began to crumble, and his minions fled in fear. The new player and his allies emerged victorious, having saved Dominion from certain destruction. With the Shadow King defeated, the new player was hailed as a hero throughout Dominion. He had proven himself to be a just and fair ruler, as well as a powerful warrior and mage. The people of Dominion praised him for his bravery and leadership, and they knew that he would continue to guide them toward a bright and prosperous future. The families that had once been bitter enemies had united under a common banner, and they had helped to bring peace and prosperity to their land. The new player had proven himself to be a worthy ruler, and he had earned the respect and admiration of all who knew him. As the sun set over Dominion, the people looked forward to a future of peace and prosperity, knowing that they were in good hands with their beloved new player at the helm. And so, the story of Dominion came to a close, with the promise of a bright and hopeful